I would only start by saying that as this is a literary festival, I think I would like to concentrate on his books. And in more than 40 years, Raghu has published 40 books, of which 3 are on Kolkata, Calcutta, then Kolkata, right? And perhaps the only city on which you have done that number of books. So perhaps we'll talk about your books on Kolkata, as well as your absolutely searing documentary of 1971, if that's all right by you. You have, of course, documented many other cities, many other places, persons, Indira Gandhi, and lately Manmohan Singh, as well as Narendra Modi. Maybe you might want to talk about them later on. But perhaps we should start with your, as you said, you love Calcutta. Your love for Calcutta. Maybe you would like to say something about that.
Well, unlike the writers, like Amit Chaudhary,
hello, madam.
You know, I happened to hear him for the first time. I haven't read any of his books, but I can say that the difference between a writer and a photographer, I mean, a writer picks up an emotion or an act,
Excuse me, sir.
and then he can empower it with so much energy, so much form and textures and colors he adds on to it. In our case, it's a fleeting moment. It's here and it's gone if you haven't been able to capture. Whereas a writer can go back and reconstruct and empower each action into anything. So for me, I mean, it's totally different. But as far as Calcutta is concerned, I was telling Malavika, maybe in my last birth, I was a Bengali. And this time, I was born in a Punjabi family. So it's a bloody lethal combination of Bengali and a Punjabi in one. And the endless energy and expression in Calcutta is unmanageable. And it's so amazing that the city overflows with human energy all the time. And that's what's so magical, that I have done my 3rd book. I promise you I can go on working on this city, which is so amazing. And maybe that's why people like Satyajit Ray, whom we worship, I mean, they come from a place which has so much magic about it.
And there are some tropes that keep coming back in your, in the Calcutta book and Kolkata, and one of them is the river. So is there something special, magical, you find yourself going back to the river? Is it, and does that come in other books also? Is the river, water, flow, something that particularly attracts you?
I think, you know, basically, in ancient times also, most civilizations, they settled around the rivers for various reasons. And above all, you see, for me, the expression taralta, the flow of water, the energy it carries in such a gentle way, and that taralta is so precious to balance yourself out in any given situation. And then, especially here in Calcutta, most ordinary lives are lived on the ghats of, of this river, which is so amazing, and endlessly you can go on shooting. That's the magic.
You, in one of your interviews in 2004, your London exhibition of 2010, you said in an interview that you as a photographer, you felt that you wanted to reveal, that your photographs you wanted to reveal and even capture. Otherwise, you felt photography was mere information. Have I expressed you correctly? If so, would you like... please put it in your own words, please. But you know what I'm trying to get at.
You see, people ask me, what keeps inspiring you that you still go on taking pictures after 45 long years? So it's the endless flow of life and magic of nature, which is never the same again. Even you stand at one spot, at one Chaurangi Square or anywhere else, the magic that keeps happening, the things get revealed in the process. So what is it that is so special? Because anybody can take those pictures of Chaurangi Square or anywhere else in the country. Somewhere in between, the relevant and irrelevant, they separate themselves. And that magical moment is the one which nudges you, hey,
take this.
And that is the energy and expression which has so basic, kind of value of that moment, which cannot be repeated and which cannot be replaced by anything else. And these ordinary daily lives of ordinary people have far more magic than the dramatic moments and dramatic situations and demonstrations and all kinds of political meetings where the drama goes on. Because in most of the places, especially in India, it's the ordinary people and their daily lives that sum up the strength of this country, and not the politicians for me.
I'd like to press you a little more on this question of relevant and irrelevant, because I think one of the fantastic things about your big panorama shots is there's so much that seems irrelevant, happening in the peripheries of the frame, but you give it a relevance. So what's going on? I mean, how do you distinguish, or do you allow things to flow into your frame and then crop later, or remove later, or you just let it be?
You see, we are visual people. Our business is to look at every inch of space, every little detail, every little movement, every little expression, every little energy that crisscrosses, to keep a watch. And that is one thing. Secondly, also, I'll go to the extent of saying the ability to connect with every inch of space. And when you invest yourself mentally, physically and spiritually into any situation, the kind of response you get, as if life and nature are performing for you, because you become a part of it. And in that process, everything is performing for you, everything comes into a rhythm, and that's where you think the irrelevant and the relevant have merged
into that one
symphony.
Yeah. Before we move on to 1971, you probably are one of the best known, most eminent visual documenters of post-independent in India, or even the last 40 years. Would you like to speak a little bit on any particular book or any particular place that has, apart from Kolkata, to give the audience a sense of something that has, as you've spoken about the rhythm, you've spoken about the mystery, that has a particular spot in your heart?
That was Mother Teresa again, and she happened to be living in Calcutta.
Right.
And I must say, she transformed my life, because every time I had to meet Mother, the problem with meeting Mother was that she will not look at you, she will look into you. In the sense that her penetrated look, she will glance into you as a human being. And it used to be so scary for me that Maa ne sab dekh liya. Arey baap re. You're facing Mother, she looks deep into you, and you say, hey Bhagwan, Maa to sab janti hai. So, I used to have proper bath, brush my teeth, and hold my hands and do my little prayer that I had to meet Mother. And each time I went and met her, the encounters were unbelievable. And also, she knew me very well, but each time I met her, she will start all over again with me.
I see.
So this was a big learning lesson, that every situation I had to discover myself all over again in front of mother. Who am I, kind of a person. So that was my biggest experience, because also I photographed Indira Gandhi for 20 long years. And these two ladies were so different. And then coming back to mother every time was another challenge for me as a human being.
And that gave a different dimension to the images, the photographs you took. Always gave. Yeah.
I have so many, moments that I can share with you, and especially one which I like to do it very quickly, is that first time when I met mother, I was photographing over 3 days. There was a great writer and editor, Desmond Doyle.
Of course, many of the audience.
Yeah, I'm sure many of you know him.
Yeah,
very talented. He was a great painter. He was a great designer. He was a great writer, and he did many things together for many people. So he called me. He says, "Raghu, I met a great lady. You must come and see her, and photograph her." So first day we met her, and in a small little room where she meets people, 2 chairs and mother sitting on one and a small table, and he introduced me to mother. And they started talking that, he's come here to photograph your work and everything. And suddenly I go to the floor, I sit on the floor and start taking some pictures, and mother looks for me and I'm not there because it's behind the table.
Yeah.
She says, "What the hell on earth are you doing here?" I said, "Mother, those sisters through the curtain, they look like angels." She said, "Oh, I see." And then the next important moment that I was photographing over 3-4 days, and then she tells me, "You don't come tomorrow, Raghu Rai, because tomorrow is Easter day." I said, "Why not, mother?" She says, "No, I don't want anybody to be walking around and taking pictures because my prayers are very important." So I was almost, stunned. I said, "My God, I can't, this is just unbelievable." So I said, "Mother, you say 2 things. One is that you serve the poorest of the poor, you look after the orphans, you look after the old people, you nurse them, you serve them, and to rejuvenate yourself, you go back and do your prayers to rejuvenate yourself." She says, "Yes." I said, "Mother, I have done half the story. I have photographed you serving people, looking after children, nursing these old people, and that is one part of the story." I said, "I have never seen him who he looks like. But I said, Mother, I have seen when you sit in prayer, he lands in your eyes." So Mother, my story is incomplete. So, yeah. Okay. So she says, "All right, with one condition, that you will not move around, you will sit at one place and take pictures." I said, "All right, Mother." That she says, "Is that a promise?" I said, "Yes." She says, "Come tomorrow at 6 o'clock. I go there. She was waiting, so she took me inside the chapel where there were hundreds of sisters praying. There was a priest and a statue of the Christ. So mother walks in, and the hall was full, so she sits down next to the wall. She says, "You sit down here." So I sit next to her, and after a while she folds her hands, she goes into prayers, and I'm sitting on the side, and being a photographer, unless I see the front face, I can't do anything. So I'm sitting and debating and feeling uneasy. Oh my God, what do I do now? What do I do now? And then I get up, I come right in front, I take a few pictures very quietly, I go back, and then after 15-20 minutes of prayer, all the sisters were going up to the priest, kissing the feet of the Christ and walking away. Now finally it was mother who gets up, who goes there about 30 feet away from where we were sitting, and mother, small and slow as she was, so she was walking. I said, "Oh my God." So I had to get up, and I walked along quietly. I took those pictures. Mother came out from one door, I came back from the same door, and then it was a moment of facing mother. Mother, jo sab dekh leti hai. So I said, "Mother, please forgive me. I couldn't keep my promise." She held my hands. She said, "Oh, God has given you this assignment. You must do it well." So these are the kind of experiences, they transform your life. They tell you to dedicate yourself to your work with the purity. These little moments have so much magic about them to learn,
So now that you've spoken about experiences that are sort of life-changing in a sense, can I now take you to 1971, take you back
You want to start a war?
Start a war, talk about your coverage of Bangladesh and the whole genre of disaster photography. And you mention in your introduction to Cry of Freedom, I think is what I forget.
Price of Freedom.
Price of Freedom, I'm sorry, Price of Freedom. You do say that you had to be an objective witness or a detached witness. I want to ask you a little bit about that and apropos how others have or have not faced this whole dilemma of can you be a detached witness? Would you like to say something about your experience?
No, I think anyone, any creative person whose responsibility is to record and capture any kind of moment of misery, of happiness or madness or whatever, you have to have, you know, as Henri Cartier-Bresson says, you have to have cool eye and warm heart. But if you get involved emotionally and sentimentally, then you cannot perform your duty, you know, with that kind of purity that will capture the magic or the tragedy to its last details. So you have to freeze your emotions and respond to the other's emotions and capture them as they touch you. And there are no two ways about it. You see, and there are also debates, you know, if somebody is dying, will you take a picture of the person or will you, you know, do something about that person? So all these kind of debates keep going on all over the world, you know, which becomes unnecessary. In fact, if you want to discuss, we can discuss that.
Yeah, but because you're saying, do you think it's unnecessary? After all, the dilemma Kevin Carter faced when with the little Sudanese baby and the vulture in the background, and compounded with the fact that he had been photographing apartheid in Africa. He couldn't take it and he as you know, he committed suicide.
Because he was, I'll say he was emotionally very weak and not a very professional guy. Why? Because the fact is that he took his picture, he went away, and the child was not eaten up by the vultures. The child was taken away to the camp and was saved.
He didn't know that then.
So means what? Means what? Either he should have picked up the child and not taken the picture. You see, I feel any one of us, a policeman, a clerk in the office, if we do our jobs with honesty and commitment, the world will be a much better place. And I cannot take up the role of a social worker unless I say that I am the only one in this situation and I can save the life of this person or that person without taking pictures, then I will do it. But otherwise, on a larger scale, to share it with the rest of the world, my first responsibility is to capture it as I experience it and share it with the rest of the world. So let's not mix the two issues, you know, because I am not a social worker, I am not a, you know.
No, I wanted to provoke you into saying, taking a position on that. But would you like to tell the audience, tell people here something about your experiences of 1971, anything? Is that I should imagine, really the most major assignment of disaster photography you've done? Disaster, war?
No, I have done Bhopal gas tragedy also.
Yes. Would you like
the only difference is that I was 4 years old, you know, when the partition took place.
Right.
And I remember how we were, you know, trying to escape, you know, from our little town in Pakistan, about 100 kilometers from Lahore, and jumping rooftops in the middle of the night, families after families, and reaching a kind of a camp, and where food was not available, and how, being a child, I used to cry. My mother used to tell me that you didn't want to eat the regular dal chawal and things like that, and you still demanded your proper food and everything. And then how gradually, finally, we took a train and reached Punjab and then Delhi. So all those memories, when I was photographing these thousands of refugees turning up into India, was like my childhood memories coming back, you know. So that was one of the important reasons. And I was just 4 or 5 years old as a photographer when I photographed, yeah. But like a child, with all the intensity and concern, I wanted to capture every bit of it. So maybe in that unconscious way, I managed to capture, you know, that intensity that you find in these pictures. You know.
And what about Bhopal?
Bhopal was again, you know, it was like, you know, in the middle of the night, we got the news from our editors from my Paris office in Magnum saying that, you know, the gas is leaking up, thousands of people were dying. So we took the morning flight, and by 8:39 we were in Bhopal. And I must say, there were international press, Indian photographers, writers, everybody, and we drove towards the city, and there was Bhopal, there was Hamidia Hospital where most of the dead and the sick were being brought, and how all of us, like vultures, were looking for dead bodies to find where people were dying. And it was also shameful, you know, that how we lose everything because we have to photograph the death that has taken over the city. But again, you know, looking at it now, I can say it was like some chemical war has happened, and you know, the city is totally in that kind of atmosphere where death has taken over the city, and no one to anybody. Everybody was helping themselves, you know, in whatever way they could. So it was a silence of death, and which was so strange for me to take. And then the endless tragedy and suffering of the people that everywhere you photograph like a madman, you know. And then you think later. I think also the fact is, like, the writers, as I said, they can go back and put many sequences together and make sense of it. For us, it's that instant, the moment things are happening, unfolding themselves. And somewhere, I'll say, that intuitive response to any given situation is far more stronger than your structured image of a situation or a happening or whatever you like. Because that instinctive response has nature's magic about it that will stay alive for itself as a document of truth. You know, that part is very important, because you can put together so many things in one canvas on one page of writing, but that intuitive response in that instant, the way it happened, has to have its own life and magic that cannot be replaced by anything else.
In other words, you mean that you might, when you were taking that flight out to Bhopal, you might have had some idea of what you were going to see. But as you say, it's the intuitive, the instinct, the what you see and that moves you that really became the most significant photographs.
No, I'll say, of course, we are talking about a disaster.
Yeah.
But in other terms, when you are out to photograph, you don't go with any idea. Because this computer here, which has got the largest information of sight, sounds and images, because ideas are stored in your head. And creativity happens beyond these ideas. And in fact, even philosophies are born later on. It's a moment of experience and realization first. Then you say, oh my God, this is what it was. And then you put it in words. And then it becomes a philosophy or a thought process or anything else. So it has to be the other way around. For photographers, for creative people, for painters, even for musicians. That Ali Akbar Khan says, you know, now I will play Darbari Kannada. Darbari has its structure, its parameters, its set notes. And within those notes, through concentration, and when you reach a moment of meditation, and when those sublime notes get touched, and those are the moments of creativity, and then you're playing with your eyes closed and you open your eyes, my God, And you yourself, you wonder, wow, this is something. So this is true creativity. The rest is well-structured, well-organized ideas put together in photographs, in writing, in painting, in music. Why bulk of the music goes dead after a while?
Right.
No, you see, and also entertainment is one thing. एक होता है आनंदित होना. That spiritual fulfillment. I remember when I was photographing Vilayat Khan Sahab and especially Kishori Amonkar. This is the purpose of music, is not to entertain people. It's a spiritual fulfillment, So this is the difference, that the bulk of the world in infotainment, this expression, whosoever has found infotainment, it's become a regular thing, and today anybody can take reasonably good pictures with digital technology. You put your camera on autofocus, auto exposure, it takes flawlessly well exposed color photographs. And similarly, writing or creating music which can entertain people is one level. But you have to, कहते हैं आसमान फाड़ के निकलना जो है, tear off these layers of the conscious mind and then reach a level of connectivity with the supreme energy, where supreme energy comes and plays its role, and you open your eyes and you say, oh my God, this is it, what it was.
But that can happen only to Raghu Rai.
No, please don't say that, because you see, Speak Make sends me to schools and colleges, and where we have to speak to children about creativity, photography, painting. And I remember, one little thing, once I was speaking to high school children, it was barely 5 minutes, 7 minutes that I was speaking, and one boy, he raised his hand. He says, can I ask you a question? I said, please do. So he says, sir, what you are saying is very interesting. Sounds very interesting. But I can't figure out what you are trying to do to us. So I said, all right, I'll tell you. You see, I had been asked to come here and uproot you, all of you, where you belong, especially your comfort zone, where you're sitting and feeling easy and lethargic. I have come here to uproot you and toss you in the air. And I said, then I'll stop you there in the space and tell you that there are two conditions before you touch down. One is that you cannot step on the steps you've already taken. Second, you cannot step on the steps other people have taken. And this is what creativity is all about. Because when you learn to watch your steps, nature has so much to offer, treasures to be looted. Only thing is, we are not explorers, we are not mad people, जिसको कहते हैं दीवाना हो गया. वो दीवानगी नहीं है. So we want to do easy things, we want to live in a comfort zone and do nice things. Even my mama says I take good pictures. So why worry about it? See, this is the problem. But it is available because his sources, his khazana is open to anybody who's prepared to explore at his cost.
So did he understand finally?
Oh yes, we had that long discussion about it.
Yeah.
No, then I explained it to them in their term also. Of course, then you go into details with them on that level.
Right, but now to come back to what you had said in the car, you were saying ki aap to lutera hai, and also you had said in an earlier, or mentioned it somewhere, that you believe in complete madness when you're photographing. And you've touched on that. I mean, one level you said in the sublime is what drives you. In another case, you're saying it's a madness. Would you like to sort of just talk about what you feel as a photographer, as a human being behind the lens?
You see, I have done almost 50 years in photography, and thanks to people, they do value my work. But when I look at myself analytically, in fact, let me tell you, when people write about my work, good or bad, I don't read it.
Okay.
for simple reason, because I have worked with newspapers, I have worked with magazines, and I know how people, writers, critics, how they respond to different things. And I don't need to read it because me, myself, I hang Raghu Rai upside down every time I am looking at what he's been doing. And that's where, and even some youngsters, when they come and tell me that we consider you to be a guru, our guru, I say, well, that's your choice, because please remember one thing, each one of us, we have our own guru sitting inside us. If you evoke that guru, especially at the end of the day, at night, when you go and put your head on your pillow, anybody and everybody, what happens before you go to sleep, process the whole day, how you spent the day. And that guy, the other guy in you tells you, Sale, kya kiya tumne? Kuch bhi nahi yaar. And you think, arey yaar, acha to kiya hai maine, ab wo acha to kiya hai. It's not enough. And the other guy keeps telling you. So this is what I say. That is so precious. That's why I don't need to know from other people. And I have got no misunderstanding about my work. That I have captured some moments, nature has gifted me some moments, and many others are still floating around, maybe for me, for somebody else, for anything.
So you're saying the introspective moment is what is absolutely vital for
anybody.
You. Yeah. Okay, we've got a few more minutes. Now I think perhaps we could talk about things like, touched upon it also, digital versus film photography. What is your, some kind of tips or guidelines? Or
I don't think we have many photographers here who like to.
No, but people would like, I think everybody, as you say, with a camera or a phone, yeah, they are photographers here and they would like to know.
Personally, for me, I have used films for almost 40 years. And then comes digital technology. And I remember I was doing a big story on Bombay for a French magazine. So I was carrying my first digital camera and with two other film cameras. So since it was my first day in Mumbai, I said, okay, let me shoot with this new technology. And then later I'll come to film when I get my concentration going. And I promise you, that day and today, I haven't been able to go back to using film. That was technology, this is technology. The difference is that with a digital camera, you click a picture and you can see where your steps are going. You see, this is a very blinding thing in photography, unlike a painter who's got his canvas, his colors, and each time he puts a stroke, he knows where his journey is leading him to. And in our case, if we exposed 20 films from morning till evening, we don't know exactly. And also to correct your course in between is so important. And digital technology gives you that power. And then, every film has its own speed and strength about it and character about it. Digital is endless, absolutely. But lots of people are also misusing that technology.
Now, Raghu, also we were talking about your book, the wonderful book on trees, which is quite exceptional, which is black and white. And you were saying there's going to be a version, you're bringing out a color version, if you remember when we were talking about it in Delhi. Would you like to, why do you want to go into a color version? And what is your preference?
Those are separate, different pictures, black and white book, because first 30 years we were shooting mostly black and white.
Right.
And this book has come out of all those years of,
I see.
moments that I have captured just by the way. And I think, again, this is another very important point, that being working as a photojournalist, working on this story or that story for this magazine or that magazine, and when you have these demands, editorial needs set, so you produce those stories and pictures to some extent. But these trees and clouds and many other things that I have been clicking away, just by the way, on the way, anywhere, are the truly potent nudges from nature, from supreme energy, which says, hey man, where do you go? What about this?
What about this?
And so I have done lots of that kind of work in black and white, and later in color with new technology to give the experience, because tree is like my grandfather, tree is like my little baby, and those which are available to me abundantly in different situations, in different moods and spirits, and talk to me differently. And that is the energy and spirit of those trees. You know, you see also, the very interesting part about the way I like to put it is, you see, the other day I was listening to Nikhil Banerjee, and we were traveling, and I said, look at this man. He has, जैसे उसकी जान पे बनी है, हर सुर जो है, वो ऐसे लगा रहा है कि जैसे उसकी जान पे बनी है, and this is the last rag he is going to play, and he's not going to be allowed to play any other rag, and this is it. और उसकी जान पे बनी है और हर सुर में इतनी जान डाल रहा है. You see, what is this? This is where the difference lies. कि तुम्हारी each time you pick up a camera, तुम्हारी जान पे बनी है, और जब आप अपनी जान देते हैं, when you capture a moment, you miss a heartbeat, and the heartbeat that you missed, your image has acquired that beat to beat for itself. You know, this is where the magic lies. And that's why today I'm such a free man. I don't have to shoot for anybody's editorial needs, or even if I shoot, I don't care, I shoot it my way. And I connect with every bit of that energy, which is again his blessings.
You're obviously in a very poetic mood this evening, I think, Raghu. And I think that will have a great resonance with the crowd, with the audience here. But I would sort of bring you down to earth a bit to your years as a photojournalist, for instance, where you produced the photograph and the caption was given not necessarily by you. And I know that sometimes it can be very annoying if some kind of a caption that you didn't think was appropriate. What do you think about captions?
I think, you know, basic information about a place or about an event is okay. But trying to sort of put poetry and words into it, there are people who write long poetic captions and ideas. I don't agree with that. Your photograph is as good as much it can speak for itself for just now, and I don't need the crutches of the word. Words don't matter to me, because as you know, people say, "Oh, a good picture." This used to be a big cliche when we started taking pictures. A good picture is worth 1,000 words. I say 1,000 words can be a lot of noise. How about some silence? So all these things, you know, you have to break those parameters, those definitions, and those cliches which are accepted as something unique, you know, utter rubbish.
Yeah. So before we open it up to the floor, would you like to tell the audience about your new thoughts on creative image? Would you like to share something with them?
Oh yes.
Why not?
Yeah. You see, I'm going to start a photography magazine called Creative Image. You see, when we started taking photographs way back in 1960s, late 60s and 70s, there used to be one magazine from England called Amateur Photographer, which is still around, which was meant for amateurs. Then there was another magazine called British Journal of Photography, which was better magazine. And बहुत पुराना, it's still alive. And we have a couple of magazines in India which are a bad version of Amateur Photographer. You see, digital technology, every cell phone has a camera. Everybody clicks a picture, family, friends, happenings, and they say, oh my God, this is such a nice picture, why don't we buy a camera? And everybody has got a DSLR camera. Everybody's taking pictures. And the magazines we have, which guide you about photography, are obnoxiously outdated, pretentious, and predictably stupid. So the idea is that for God's sake, that our new generations, our younger generations and young minds, and even age, it doesn't matter. You see, the other day, last August, His Holiness was giving his sermons, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he was giving his teachings in Ladakh. And I'm doing a book on him because Mother has left us halfway through. So I have found His Holiness Dalai Lama. So I went to photograph him. So he saw me, invited me in. He says, "Oh, you still travel a lot. How old are you?" I said, "Your Holiness, I am only 72 years young man." So he laughed very loudly and he gave me a nice hug. Because when you invest your energy, your spiritual energy into everything that you experience, every investment, like every investment in your bank, is your investment which has some returns. Similarly, life also has, nature also has its returns. And all those energies being invested wrongly and repetitively, and especially for the new minds and young minds, they must know there is a world beyond us which is waiting for us to explore. So the magazine will have several sections. One big section will be on great masters from Europe and America. But basically it will be India-centric, and then Asia, and then Europe. So it will have one of our own great photographers, Indian photographers, his portfolio, and then a Western master's work, then young photographers' work, and then amateurs' work with freshness, so that everyone gets to experience something they've never seen before. And it's a sinful act when we share our predictable second-hand information with our children, with our new generations, because they are the ones who can explore the world into endless experiences. And if we keep feeding them with second-hand rubbish, they get trapped, and that's a sinful act. And that's why we say that it's very important that for God's sake, whatever you click, take a look and see yourself, what you are doing to yourself and to the world,
Thank you, Raghu. Should we now, we can ask, we have about 10 minutes for questions, but yeah. Make it a question, please, and be brief.
Am I audible? Yeah. Okay. Keeping in mind that there are a lot of photo editing softwares and etc., technology has taken many leaps forward. Do you think that it is crippling the talent or their ability to create something on their own and persevere by taking good photographs for the young amateur photographers today?
It's making things easier for many people who want to experiment with the technology and the ideas put together. You see, even when there was no digital technology, some people did double exposures, some played with the negatives, making montages and collages. There was one photographer, American photographer, Jerry Eltzman. He used to mix 4 or 5 negatives and make an image that he thinks is bringing which brings out his dreams that he keeps imagining. And I promise you, without digital technology, the images he created were unbelievable and of great quality and richness of experience. So if any one of these youngsters can do the same in their own way, why not? You see, when you're doing photojournalism or documentary photography, you cannot mess around with Photoshop. But if you want to do experimental and creative work of another kind, the world is endlessly open for anybody. And you see, this is where the magic lies, And one shouldn't worry that now there are so many more photographers clicking away. Why not, More the merrier.
Gentleman in front, please. Yeah, 1 second.
There seems to be a constant argument among the painters and artists and photographers whether photography can be considered an art. I've been taking pictures all my life. I'm a strict amateur. I'd like to know your view. Do you consider photography as an art, or a photographer can be an artist?
Does it matter? You see, the purpose of photography, okay? I think, you guys here in Calcutta, you know it, that photography came to India, to Calcutta first. There were two photographers, Bourne and Shepard. They were brought here by the East India Company, and they opened their studios here, and they photographed the empire they ruled, and they left unbelievable body of work on India. Okay, now a photograph of Chaurangi Square or riverfront done by Bourne and Shepard, which is a great image, and a painting done by somebody like who? Hussein or any other great painter in this country in 1850s. So when you look at the painting by a great master, you say, yes, very nice painting. But when you look at that photograph taken 150 years ago of your city, you say, oh my God, that's the way we used to be. So this is the photo history of that time. The purpose of photography is to capture the time we live in. If you are doing that faithfully with sensitivity and responsibility, there is no other medium that can replace. History is written and can be rewritten, but photo history is here to stay as a permanent documentation. But then the fact is, as I said earlier, that a writer can empower a little action with so much drama and so much forms and textures he adds on to it. Whereas we capture it with that kind of honesty and intuitive energy that has its own power to communicate. So what is more important? We are not polluting it with our own minds. We cannot do that. So you can think it in many different ways, but to me it doesn't matter whether they call a photographer an artist or whatever. It doesn't matter.
So just last two questions now, please. Gentlemen here and one in the back. Please make it brief also.
Good evening, sir. Sir, in your major earlier work, there has to be little layers of Western photographers layering a composition, and in the present generation work, it's losing out. So what's your take on that?
What kind of layers are we talking about?
So like in your pictures, there are a couple of pictures inside one picture. So if we subdivide one of the frames, we can do a couple of pictures.
Yeah, we say it like this. You see, like photography was born in the West, it was brought up in the West and came to India. But nevertheless, the Indian photographers, some of them, and even Raja Deen Dayal did some great portraits and landscapes as well, Now, the concept when people like André Curtis and Henri Cartier-Bresson came onto the scene, and they talked about a moment, capturing a moment in space, a decisive moment. Great. So thousands of photographers have captured a moment in space which is fantastic, which is very good, which is very powerful. But India is an ancient civilization where so many centuries have learned to live side by side at the same time. And the amazing part of India is overcrowded, and layers of things keep happening at any given place. So a moment in space is not enough for India. And that's why I started using panoramic camera, so that my images have several moments happening at the same time. So, depends how you look at the world and how you want to interpret it. There is no end to it. And this is what is so magical about creative expression.
So we've been given permission for two last questions. A gentleman over there and just one more, please, from the front.
I'm asking you about
in most disastrous situations,
Mic, please. Please speak into the mic.
in most disastrous situations where you have seen people are dying or dead, there is a human feeling inside you and a mission to show the whole world what is happening. How do you control your emotions in that case?
वो है ना, दुनिया में हूँ, दुनिया का तलबगार नहीं हूँ, बाजार से गुजरा हूँ, खरीदार नहीं हूँ. इतनी तो पोइट्री इस पे लिखी गई है. हम ही सिद्ध समाज, हम मौनी हम बोले. तो इतना कुछ तो है. To understand yourself in context to the world. All these things are there, the control, the sensitivity and the responsibility all have to work together, you know, as a disciplined man, as a disciplined professional.
Last question. Is there a last question, or there's one hand waving right at the back?
Yeah.
Yes, you.
And
Do you have a mic?
I want to know.
Please give him a mic.
Sir, I want to know what do you want to capture in Calcutta?
Just 1 minute, please.
Good evening. Sir, I would like to know, since as an amateur photographer who started with digital, one problem which I can clearly see as compared to film is that we tend to click too many pictures. As in, you said you want to capture the moment. And there's almost a panic that, am I going to lose this moment right now, and clicking through pictures. So from your vast experience, if you could enlighten on how to analyze the situation and say, okay, now's the time to start clicking. Do you have any kind of process for that?
there is no hard and fast rule. But if you panic, कोई शेर नहीं आने वाला जो तुम्हें खा जाएगा. Click as many as you like and then look at them very clearly and see what you got and tell yourself not to do that again. See, there is no hard and fast rule for anything in creativity. You can go mad doing pictures, you know, or you could be taking a moment here and a moment there, as long as it enriches you and you capture the magic that you were looking for, you know.
Okay, Raghu, I think unless you have anything else.
There's
last
and last one, okay.
Last person, okay. Indefatigable.
Yes, I was wondering.
We can't hear you.
A while ago you mentioned that the digital technology is being misused in some ways. So I was hoping that you would elaborate a little on that. In what ways, I mean?
You see, a knife gets misused by a butcher. And when surgeon uses it, when a housewife uses it, you know, we can't stop them. You know. This is the way world is. It doesn't matter.
Okay, can you be slightly more specific?
Okay, misuse means, you know, when you unnecessarily get other elements into a situation which didn't exist there and you try to make something arty, you know, or something unnecessarily dramatic, which doesn't mean a thing, you know. You see, today two things are happening. Now some people are discovering archival work, you know, done 50 years ago. It doesn't matter when the picture was taken. If the picture doesn't have that energy and that time it has captured, it doesn't matter whether it was taken 50 years or 100 years ago. Second thing which is going on with the young people is fine art photography. Let me tell you, when we were young and started taking pictures, our elder used to tell us this fine art photography of forms, textures, colors is physicality of things. And this is no art photography. This is just visual pleasures, physical pleasures that we seek. So try to look for inner meanings and depths in everything that you come across. So, you know, misuse and all these terms, you know, how you utilize your technology is one thing. Great people have done great work through technology. And that's where you make a difference. So it shouldn't matter, shouldn't worry about anything, you know. You do your thing with your sincerity and with your sense of exploration and truthfulness. The rest will follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Raghu. So we should wait for your next book and for Creative Image. Yeah.